said it was very clear that she was trying to use the criminal system in that way, and he was very uncomfortable with that. He had forwarded charges to the state attorney's office, let the state attorney's office decide, which they end up not filing, by the way. And she did not think that was good enough. She was furious. She said, and I quote, "If the judge sees him arrested, it will help me keep my baby." She wanted him arrested in family court in front of the judge and made that very, very clear. That was what was important to her. The detective said in 20 whatever years that he's been doing this job, he has never had anybody ask him to do that. Never. And she was very adamant, and they talked for 15 to 20 minutes. And she went from crying almost hysterically to aggressive and yelling at him and then screeching at the top of her lungs, all because she could not get him to go with her plan. She also said to him, "You will arrest him in front of the judge, and I will make sure that you do." Then she said, "I will do anything I have to do to keep my baby out." She wasn't saying, "I'm so afraid of this man. Please help me. I'm a victim of domestic violence. I need help." Not at all. She's saying, "I want to keep my baby." And she's afraid that this man, who is 30 years older than she is, and a lot more established, has a lot more money, has a lot more resources, she's afraid that this man is going to get custody of her child instead of her. So after this discussion with Detective Gillum, in about September 17th of 2018, the second hearing for the injunction happens. Remember, this injunction hearing was in two parts. One was in July and one was in September. All of the same allegations. He's poisoning me, the stuff in South Carolina. Again, they're not even living together. And she fails. The judge in that case says, no. No injunction. And this man will have immediate visitation with his child, who, by the way, was 6 months old and he'd never met her. It wasn't for lack of trying. There may be a lot of deadbeat dads out there that don't care about seeing their children and don't want to be around. This man tried everything to be around for his child, to be there for the birth, to visit the child, to see the child. And she kept the child away from him for 6 months. And the first visitation, you heard from Stephanie Murphy, the first visitation, all of a sudden, everything's glorious again. Now, all of a sudden, the defendant wants to go with him. I'll go with you. And now we're in a stage where we're acting like we're going to get back together. Because she knew the court system was not working, and she was afraid that if she didn't buddy up to him, he was going to get this child away from her. So it begins the charade of her telling him, we're going to get back together, we're going to be a family. She played on Doug Benefield's wishes. He wanted more than anything to have a family, his family together, to have his wife that he loved and this child all together. And she kept telling him, yes, that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to work towards. So that starts about a year of them kind of getting along, right? And then September of 2019, which is about a year later, Doug finds out she's dating someone else. He files for divorce. And a series of complaints start against Doug Benefield for now abusing the child. Which, by the way, were investigated by law enforcement, and not one of them resulted in any charges. And May 1st of 2020, the defendant, having failed in the criminal system, again, files for another injunction based on these allegations that fail in the criminal system. Do you see a pattern here? May 4th, only a few days later, after she files for another injunction, Doug files for sole custody of the child. This is Ashley Benefield's biggest fear, that this man is going to get sole custody. But she's making all of these grand allegations against him that he knows are not true. There's got to be something wrong, and it's probably not safe for this child to even be with her. So he files for full custody. And what happens? All of a sudden, she sidles up to him, and now we're getting back together. And we start to go to marriage counseling, and we go see Dr. Forrest, who referred them to Dr. Quintel. And they're going to marriage counseling about how they're going to get together. And to Doug, she's saying, yes, I want to reconcile. Let's get back together. But behind his back to the doctor, she's like, no way, no how. I'm not getting together with him. Then she goes on all these social outings with Doug and the child. Goes to the beach, goes to the movies, goes out to dinner, to lunch, swims at the pool at his apartment complex. Giving Doug all of these mixed signals. We're gonna reconcile. We're gonna get all this back together. And in the back of her mind, she knew all along. She was just waiting for an opportunity to strike. And then 6/1 of 2020, the system sends them for an evaluation with Dr. Broder. And they're like, what is going on here? Someone needs an evaluation. So they go to this evaluation with Dr. Broder, and this deception on the part of Ashley Benefield continues. She does the same thing. We're going to reconcile, we're going to get back together, and then when she's not with him, she's saying that that's not true. And then towards the end of September 2020, but before the 21st, there is a last meeting between Ashley Benefield and Dr. Broder. He said it was in his office. She was leaving. She was walking through the waiting room and going to the door, and she's upset because this is not going fast enough. I want the report. I want this to be done. We need to move to Maryland. Why do you think she's moving to Maryland? We need to move to Maryland. This is taking way too much time. And she says to him, I'll take matters into my own hands. And that was 7 days, up to 17 days before, depending on about what time it was, he gets murdered. On 9/21 of 2020, after this comment to Dr. Broder, she goes to mediation with Doug Benefield, and they end the mediation saying everyone's going to drop everything. Because at this point, Doug had filed for a divorce again. And Ashley had filed for an injunction again. So at this hearing on the 30th, those things were going to be heard, as well as a joint motion to release a report by Dr. Broder. But they go to mediation, and at the end of mediation, it's very fast because they all agreed. We're dropping everything. We're going to Maryland. So that was the plan. Ashley Benefield had no intention of dropping that injunction. Look at the text messages between her and Doug that were introduced by the state for the week before this murder happened. They're talking to each other about the fact that everything's going to be dropped.